Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the TSS Endeavour and watched the stars through the main screen. The ship moved slowly through space at the edge of human territory. This was his job every day for the past 3 years. He watched the border between human space and the rest of the galaxy. Most days nothing happened. Today felt different. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat at her station and checked the weapon systems. She was young but skilled at her job. The crew trusted her to keep them safe. Chief Engineer Pete Sullivan worked in the engine room below. He made sure the ship ran well. These 3 people had worked together for a long time. They knew each other very well. The galaxy was a big place with many different alien races. Humans were not the strongest or the smartest, but other aliens were afraid of them. Nobody talked about why they were afraid. They just stayed away from human space. The Galactic Council had made rules about this. They told all alien races to stay out of human territory unless they had permission. Most aliens followed these rules. Jake looked at the star map on his screen. The Kepler sector was quiet today. Sometimes merchant ships got lost and crossed into human space by mistake. When this happened, Jake would help them get back to neutral space. He never caused trouble. He just did his job and kept the peace. Amy turned to face Jake. Her face looked serious. The sensors were picking up something strange. Long-range scans showed ships moving in the next sector. These were not human ships. They belonged to the Zephyrian Empire. The Zephyrians were a race of tall reptile people. They were proud and strong. They had a powerful military. Jake frowned as he looked at the data. The Zephyrian ships were moving closer to human space. This was not normal. Usually, they stayed far away from the border. Something was happening. Jake felt worried, but he did not show it. A captain had to stay calm for his crew. Pete came up from the engine room. He was a big man with strong hands. He had worked on ships for 20 years. Pete could fix anything that broke. He looked at the screens and saw the alien ships. Pete shook his head. He did not like what he saw. The communication system made a sound. A message was coming in from Terran Command. Admiral Kate Henderson appeared on the screen. She was the head of all human forces in this sector. Her face looked tired. She had been working hard lately. The Admiral spoke in a clear voice. She told Jake that the Zephyrians were acting strange. Their ships were moving in new patterns. They were getting closer to human space than ever before. The Admiral wanted Jake to watch them carefully. She told him to report anything unusual right away. Jake nodded and said he understood. The Admiral ended the call. The bridge became quiet. Everyone was thinking about what this meant. The Zephyrians had never caused trouble before. They were careful not to anger humans. Why were they changing now? Amy ran more scans of the area. She found 12 Zephyrian ships in total. 3 were big warships. The rest were smaller, but still dangerous. This was not a normal patrol. This looked like a military force getting ready for something. Jake walked around the bridge. He was thinking hard. The stories about human fighting ability were known across the galaxy. Some aliens thought these stories were just tales to scare people, but Jake knew they were true. Humans had a way of fighting that scared other races. When humans got angry, they did not stop until they won. The problem was that most aliens did not understand humans. They thought humans were weak because they were not the biggest or fastest. But humans had something else. They had a will to fight that other races did not have. When humans were hurt, they fought harder. When they were scared, they became dangerous. Pete checked the ship's weapons. Everything was working well. The Endeavour was not a warship, but it could defend itself. The crew hoped they would not need to fight, but they were ready if trouble came. Jake remembered his training at the academy. His teachers had told him about human history. Humans had fought many wars on their home planet. They had learned how to win against bigger and stronger enemies. This knowledge helped them in Space 2. The hours passed slowly. The alien ships kept moving closer. Jake sent regular reports to Admiral Henderson. She thanked him for the information. She was watching the situation carefully. 2. Amy noticed something new on her screens. One of the big Zephyrian ships was moving ahead of the others. It was coming straight toward the border. Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was not good news. The ship that was moving forward looked different from the others. It had special markings on its hull. Amy ran the markings through the computer. The results made her gasp. This was a royal ship. Someone very important was on board. Jake called Admiral Henderson again. He told her about the royal ship. The Admiral's face became very serious. She told Jake to be extra careful. Royal aliens sometimes did crazy things to prove they were brave. The Zephyrian royal ship was now very close to human space. Jake could see it clearly on his screens. It was a beautiful ship, but also very dangerous. The weapons on it could destroy the Endeavor. Easily, Pete came back to the bridge. He had made sure all systems were ready. The engines were running well. The weapons were charged. The shields were up. If trouble came, they would be ready to fight or run. Jake stood up and looked at his crew. Amy and Pete were good people. They had families back home. Jake did not want anything bad to happen to them. But he also had a job to do. He had to protect human space. The royal ship was now at the border. It stopped moving and just waited there. Jake wondered what the alien prince was thinking. Did he want to talk? Did he want to fight? Jake would find out soon enough. The communication system made a sound again. Someone was trying to contact the Endeavor. Jake looked at Amy and Pete. They both nodded. They were ready for whatever came next. Jake took a deep breath and prepared to answer the call. Prince Vextar stood tall on the bridge of his flagship. The Zephyrian Royal was young and full of pride. His scales were bright green, and his eyes were cold like ice. He wore the uniform of a high commander. Gold symbols showed his royal rank. He believed he was the best warrior in the galaxy. General Crix stood next to the prince. He was older and wiser. His scales were darker from many battles. Crix had served the royal family for 30 years. He knew how to fight and when to fight. Today he was worried about what the prince wanted to do. The prince looked at the star map. The border of human space was right in front of them. For years, his people had stayed away from this area. The Galactic Council had warned everyone to respect human territory. But Vextar thought this was foolish. He believed humans were weak, and the galaxy was afraid of nothing. Crix spoke in a low voice. He reminded the prince that the High Command had ordered them to stay away from human space. The mission was supposed to be a simple patrol of their own territory, but the prince had other ideas. He wanted to show the galaxy that Zephyrians were not afraid of humans. The prince laughed at his general's words. He said the old leaders were too careful. It was time for young blood to lead the empire. He would prove that humans were not special. One quick victory would make him famous across the galaxy. The royal fleet was strong. 3 heavy cruisers led the group. Each one had powerful weapons and thick armor. 12 smaller ships followed behind. They were fast and deadly. The crews were all elite warriors. They had trained their whole lives for battle. Vextar gave the order to move forward. The fleet crossed into human space. Alarms started ringing on every ship. The computer systems warned that they were entering Forbidden's territory. The prince told his crew to ignore the warnings. He was not afraid of human rules. Within minutes, they detected a human ship. It was smaller than the royal flagship. The prince smiled when he saw it. This would be easy. One small human ship against his entire fleet. The battle would be over quickly. The human ship sent a message. Captain Jake Morrison appeared on the communication screen. He looked calm and spoke in a friendly voice. Morrison offered to escort the Zephyrian fleet back to neutral space. He said no one would report the border crossing. It could be forgotten. The prince was angry at this offer. He did not want charity from a human. He wanted respect and fear. Vexstar told Morrison that Zephyrians went where they pleased. He demanded that the human ship surrender immediately. Morrison refused in a polite way. He said he could not abandon his post. The human captain started sending emergency signals to other ships. He was calling for help. The prince saw this as a sign of weakness. General Crix tried to change the prince's mind. He said they should take the human offer and leave. There was no honor in fighting a smaller ship. But the prince would not listen. He was too proud to back down now. The prince gave the order to attack. The flagship's weapons powered up. Bright energy beams shot across space toward the human ship. The other Zephyrian ships joined the attack. The small human vessel was hit many times. The human ship's shields failed quickly. Explosions rocked the hull. The prince watched with satisfaction as the enemy ship was damaged. But something surprised him. The human ship did not surrender. It kept fighting back. Jake Morrison and his crew fought hard even though they were outnumbered. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez kept firing the weapons until the very end. Chief Engineer Pete Sullivan worked to keep the ship running. They all knew they might die, but they did not give up. The Endeavor was badly damaged. Several crew members were killed, including Amy Rodriguez. But the ship was still sending signals. Other human ships would know what happened here. They would know that Zephyrians had attacked first. The prince ordered his ships to stop firing. The human vessel was crippled and could not fight anymore. Vexstar felt proud of his victory. He had proven that humans could be beaten. Now the galaxy would respect Zephyrian power, but General Crix was not happy. He had seen something in the way the humans fought. Even when they were losing, they did not stop. They fought until they could not fight anymore. This was not normal behavior. Most races would surrender when defeat was certain. The prince sent a message to the Zephyrian High Command. He reported his great victory over the humans. He said the enemy was weak and could be conquered easily. The prince asked for permission to attack more human ships. The High Command was horrified when they heard the news. The old leaders knew this was a disaster. They had broken the most important rule in the galaxy. They had attacked humans without cause. The consequences would be terrible. The prince did not understand why his leaders were upset. He had won a battle. He had shown Zephyrian strength. But the older aliens knew better. They had heard the real stories about human warfare. They knew what would happen next. General Crix tried to explain to the prince. He said humans were different from other races. When they were attacked, they did not think about politics or economics. They only thought about revenge. The human response would be swift and terrible. The prince laughed at these warnings. He said one small human ship could not hurt his fleet. Even if more human ships came, they would be defeated too. The prince ordered his fleet to stay in human space. He wanted to capture more territory. Hours passed and nothing happened. The prince began to think he was right. Maybe the humans were too scared to fight back. Maybe they would surrender their territory without a battle. The prince started making plans to claim human planets. But deep in human space, things were happening. Emergency signals were being sent to every human ship and base. The attack on the Endeavor had been reported to the highest levels. Admiral Kate Henderson was mobilizing the entire Terran Defense Force. The prince did not know that he had just started a war. He thought he had won a simple battle. But the humans saw it differently. They saw an unprovoked attack on their territory. They saw the murder of their people, and they would respond in the only way they knew how. The Zephyrian fleet waited in human space. The prince was confident and proud. His crews were celebrating their victory, but they did not know that human warships were already moving toward them. They did not know that their simple raid had awakened something terrible. The prince stood on his bridge and looked at the stars. He thought about the glory that would come from this day. He would be remembered as the leader who conquered human space, but he would be remembered for something very different. Admiral Kate Henderson stood in the war room at Terran Command. The large screens showed star maps and ship positions. Red lights flashed everywhere. The emergency alert system was active across all human space. Every available ship was being called to battle stations. The news of the attack on the Endeavour had spread quickly. Human commanders from every sector were reporting to duty. The Terran Defense Force was mobilizing faster than ever before. This was not a planned operation. This was pure human anger turned into military action. Captain Lisa Carter received her orders while her ship was in dock for repairs. The TSS Retribution was a heavy destroyer with powerful weapons. Lisa had been a combat pilot before becoming a ship captain. She knew how to fight, and she was ready for war. Lisa's battle group included 5 heavy destroyers and 2 carrier ships. The carriers held hundreds of fighter craft. Each fighter was piloted by a human who wanted revenge for the Endeavour. The pilots were eager to show the aliens what happened when humans were attacked. Colonel Danny Wright was preparing his ground forces at the same time. The Terran Marines were the most feared soldiers in the galaxy. They trained constantly for boarding actions and planet attacks. Wright's men were loading their weapons and checking their armor. They hoped they would get to fight today. The human response was massive and swift. Within 6 hours of the attack, dozens of human warships were moving toward the border. More ships were coming from deeper in human territory. The entire military machine was turning toward one goal: destroy the aliens who had dared to attack them. Henderson studied the tactical reports. The Zephyrian fleet was still in human space. They seemed to be waiting for something. Maybe they thought more human ships would come to surrender. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Admiral opened a channel to all ship commanders. Her voice was cold and hard. She told them that the Zephyrians had killed human crew members without cause. They had violated human territory and attacked a peaceful patrol ship. The response would be total and final. Captain Carter's battle group was the first to reach the border. Her ships moved at maximum speed toward the enemy fleet. The human vessels were smaller than the Zephyrian cruisers, but they were fast and well armed. More importantly, they were crewed by humans who wanted to fight. The Zephyrian prince saw the human ships approaching. He was not worried. His fleet was still larger and more powerful. But General Crix felt afraid. He had studied human military history. He knew that humans fought differently than other races. The human ships did not try to talk or negotiate. They came straight at the Zephyrian fleet with weapons ready. Captain Carter gave the order to attack. Human ships opened fire at maximum range. The space battle began with a fury that shocked the aliens. The Zephyrians expected a normal space battle. Ships would fight at long range with careful tactics. But the humans did something different. They charged straight at the enemy ships. Some human vessels rammed into Zephyrian cruisers. The human crews died, but they took alien ships with them. Commander Steve Parker led a squadron of human fighters from one of the carriers. His small ship swarmed around the Zephyrian flagship. The alien point defense systems shot down many fighters, but more kept coming. Parker's men flew their ships directly into enemy weapons to destroy them. The Zephyrians were horrified by what they saw. The humans seemed to care more about killing enemies than staying alive. Fighter pilots would ram their ships into alien vessels. Ship captains would sacrifice their entire crews to destroy one enemy cruiser. Prince Vexstar watched his fleet take heavy damage. The humans were winning through sheer violence and determination. His proud warriors were being beaten by an enemy that refused to follow normal rules of warfare. The prince finally understood why the galaxy feared humans, but the space battle was only the beginning. More human ships kept arriving. Admiral Henderson had committed every available vessel to this fight. The human fleet grew larger every hour. Soon the Zephyrians were outnumbered and outgunned. The human ships pushed deep into Zephyrian territory. They were not content to just defend their border. They wanted to punish the aliens for their attack. Human forces began destroying Zephyrian military bases and supply stations. Colonel Wright's Marines got their chance to fight when human ships boarded damaged Zephyrian vessels. The Marines fought with a savagery that terrified the alien crews. They showed no mercy to enemies who had killed their people. The Zephyrian military commanders were calling for help, but their own fleets were scattered across the galaxy. It would take days to gather enough ships to fight the humans. By then it might be too late. General Crix tried to contact the human fleet. He wanted to surrender and end the fighting. But the humans did not answer his calls. They were not interested in surrender. They wanted to destroy everyone who had been involved in the attack. The human advance continued for days. Zephyrian military installations were systematically destroyed. The aliens began to understand that this was not a normal war. This was human justice. The punishment would continue until the humans decided it was enough. News of the conflict spread across the galaxy. Other alien races watched in horror as the Zephyrians were crushed. The humans were showing everyone what happened when their territory was violated. The lesson was clear and terrible. Captain Carter's ship led the assault on a major Zephyrian base. The enemy had built strong defenses, but the humans broke through them with overwhelming force. The base was destroyed and its garrison eliminated. No prisoners were taken. The Zephyrian High Command was in panic. They had never seen such a complete military disaster. Their proud fleet was being destroyed by humans who seemed to care nothing for their own losses. The old leaders knew they had to find a way to stop this war. Prince Vexstar was trapped on his flagship as human. Ships surrounded him. His royal fleet was in ruins. Most of his ships were destroyed or crippled. The prince finally understood that. He had made a terrible mistake. The human fleet continued its advance. They were not going to stop until they had made their point. The Zephyrian Empire was learning what it meant to anger humans. The galaxy was watching and taking notes. Admiral Henderson received reports from her commanders. The human forces were winning on every front. The Zephyrians were being pushed back into their own territory, but the Admiral was not satisfied yet. She wanted to make sure this lesson would never be forgotten. The human war machine was running at full power. Every ship and every soldier was focused on one goal: show the galaxy that humans could not be attacked without consequences. The Zephyrians had crossed a line that should never be crossed. Now they would pay the price. Prince Vexstar sat in his damaged command chair and looked at the destruction around him. His beautiful flagship was barely holding together. Sparks fell from broken ceiling panels. The lights flickered on and off. Dead crew members lay on the floor. The prince could smell smoke and fear in the air. The human ships had surrounded his fleet. Everywhere he looked, there were human warships pointing weapons at him. The prince counted over 50 enemy vessels. More were arriving every hour. His own fleet was down to just a few working ships. General Crix was badly injured, but still alive. He had been thrown against a wall when the humans rammed one of their ships into the flagship. Blood ran down his face, but he kept working at his station. The old general was trying to find a way to save what was left of their fleet. The humans were not acting like any enemy the Zephyrians had ever fought. Normal wars had rules and limits. Armies would fight until one side surrendered. Then there would be negotiations and peace treaties. But the humans seemed to want total destruction. Human ships were now deep inside Zephyrian space. They had destroyed 3 major military bases and dozens of smaller installations. The Zephyrian fleet was scattered and running. No one wanted to face the human war machine. The prince tried to contact the human fleet commander. He wanted to surrender and end the fighting. But the humans would not talk to him. They just kept attacking. It was like they wanted to punish the entire Zephyrian Empire for his mistake. General Crix finally got a message through to the human forces. A woman appeared on the communication screen. She wore the uniform of a major, and her name tag said, Brooks. Major Kelly Brooks looked tired but determined. Her eyes were cold when she looked at the Zephyrian officers. Crix spoke carefully. He said the Zephyrians wanted to surrender. They would accept any terms the humans wanted. The general begged for mercy for his remaining crews. Many of them were young soldiers who had just followed orders. Major Brooks listened without emotion. Then she spoke in a clear voice. She said the humans had terms for ending the war. The Zephyrians would withdraw from 3 star systems near human space. They would pay massive amounts of money and resources as punishment. Most importantly, they would hand over Prince Vextar for trial. The prince was shocked by these demands. He was royal blood. No one had ever demanded that a Zephyrian prince be put on trial by aliens. But Crix knew they had no choice. The humans could destroy what was left of their fleet if they refused. The general sent the human terms to the Zephyrian High Command. The old leaders were horrified, but they understood the situation. Their military was being destroyed. Their economy was being ruined. They had to accept the human demands or face total defeat. Captain Ryan Foster was leading a deep strike mission into Zephyrian territory. His ship had special equipment for recording everything they saw. Foster was documenting the destruction of enemy facilities. The humans wanted the galaxy to see what happened to those who attacked them. Foster's crew filmed the ruins of military bases. They showed destroyed ships and abandoned installations. The recordings were broadcast across the galaxy on all communication channels. Every alien race could see the power of human revenge. The message was clear to everyone who watched. The humans were not content to just defend themselves. They would hunt down and destroy anyone who threatened them. This was not a war of conquest. This was a war of punishment. Other alien governments watched the broadcasts in fear. The Zephyrians had been considered one of the stronger military powers in the galaxy. If humans could destroy them so easily, what would happen to weaker races? The balance of power was changing. The Galactic Council held emergency meetings. The alien leaders were afraid that the human war would spread. They sent messages to Admiral Henderson, begging her to show mercy. But the humans were not interested in alien opinions. They would decide when the war was over. Prince Vextar received word that his government had accepted the human terms. The High Command was abandoning him to save the Empire. The prince felt bitter and angry. He had tried to bring glory to his people. Instead, he had brought disaster, but the transfer of territory began immediately. Zephyrian colonies in 3-star systems were ordered to evacuate. Human ships moved in to take control of the abandoned worlds. The refugees fled deeper into Zephyrian space with nothing but what they could carry. The war reparations were massive. The Zephyrian Empire would pay for decades to cover the cost of human military action. Their economy would be crippled for years. The proud alien race was learning the true price of aggression. Against humans. General Crix prepared for the surrender ceremony. He would hand over his prince to the humans as agreed. Crix felt shame at betraying his royal leader, but he also knew that Vextar had brought this fate upon himself. The ceremony took place on a neutral station near the border. Human and Zephyrian officials met under the watchful eyes of galactic media. The galaxy was watching to see how this war would end. Admiral Henderson represented the human government. She was a small woman, but her presence filled the room. They, alien officials, were afraid to look directly at her. They had learned to fear human determination. Major Brooks escorted Prince Vexstar to the ceremony. The prince was in chains, but he still held his head high. He refused to show weakness, even in defeat. But everyone could see that his spirit was broken. The surrender document was signed by both sides. The Zephyrians agreed to all human terms. They would withdraw from the contested systems. They would pay the war reparations. Most importantly, they would never again enter human space without permission. The prince was transferred to human custody. He would be taken to a human prison to await trial. The charges against him included murder, piracy, and violation of galactic law. The sentence could be death or life imprisonment. The war was officially over, but the effects would last for generations. The Zephyrian Empire was weakened and humiliated. Other alien races had seen what humans could do when they were angry. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. Admiral Henderson held a press conference after the ceremony. She spoke to reporters from across the galaxy. Her message was simple and direct. Anyone who attacked humans would face the same fate as the Zephyrians. There would be no mercy for those who chose war. The human fleet began its journey home. They had accomplished their mission. The enemy was defeated, and the lesson was taught. But the humans knew this was not really the end. Other aliens would test them in the future, and when they did, the humans would be ready. The Treaty of Arcturus was signed in a grand ceremony at the neutral space station. Ambassador Lavra Martinez represented humanity at the negotiations. She was a skilled diplomat who had worked with alien governments for 20 years. But she was surprised by how quickly the other races agreed to human demands. The treaty gave humans everything they wanted. The Zephyrian Empire would pay war reparations for 50 years. 3 star systems would become human territory. Most importantly, the galaxy officially recognized that human space was forbidden to all alien vessels without permission. Prince Vexstar stood trial in a human military court. The proceedings were broadcast across the galaxy. Every alien race could watch as the Zephyrian prince faced justice for his crimes. The trial lasted 3 weeks, and the evidence was overwhelming. The human prosecutors showed recordings of the attack on the Endeavor. They displayed the names and faces of the crew members who had died. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez's family came to court to testify about their loss. The prince sat quietly and listened to the pain he had caused. Judge Colonel Martha Wells read the verdict in a clear voice. Prince Vexstar was found guilty of murder, piracy, and crimes against galactic peace. The sentence was life imprisonment, without the possibility of parole. The prince would spend the rest of his life in a human prison. The Zephyrian government accepted the verdict without protest. They could not afford to anger the humans again. General Crix became the new leader of the Empire. His first act was to order all military forces to stay far away from human territory. The 3 star systems that were given to humans were quickly colonized. Human families moved to the new worlds and began building cities. The former Zephyrian colonies became productive human settlements. The aliens watched this expansion with growing concern. Captain Jake Morrison recovered from his injuries and was promoted to admiral. He was given command of the entire Border Defense Force. The TSS Endeavor was rebuilt with better weapons and stronger armor. The new ship was renamed the TSS Amy Rodriguez to honor the fallen officer. Pete Sullivan was promoted to captain and given command of the new Rodriguez. He had served with Jake for many years and knew how to handle the responsibility. The crew was proud to serve on a ship named after their lost friend. The human military built new bases in the conquered systems. These installations were equipped with the most advanced weapons and sensors. Any alien ship that came too close would be detected immediately. The humans were making sure that no one would ever surprise them again. The galaxy's response to the war was immediate and dramatic. Trade agreements that had been stalled for years were suddenly approved in humanity's favor. Alien governments offered military alliances and defense treaties. Everyone wanted to be friends with the humans. The Galactic Council held a special session to discuss the new situation. The alien representatives were nervous and afraid. They had seen what humans could do when they were angry. No one wanted to be the next target of human military action. New shipping routes were established that went around human space instead of through it. The extra distance cost time and money, but aliens were willing to pay. Being safe was more important than being fast. The buffer zone around human territory grew larger every month, several smaller. Alien races requested protection from human forces. They were afraid that other powerful empires might attack them. The humans agreed to provide security in exchange for favorable trade deals. The galaxy was learning that humans could be valuable allies. The economic effects of the war were felt across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire was bankrupt and could barely maintain its military. Other races had to spend more money on defense in case humans attacked them. The balance of power had shifted dramatically. Admiral Henderson was promoted to head of all human military forces. She used her new position to build up the fleet even more. New ships were constructed with lessons learned from the war. The humans were preparing for the next conflict. The story of the war became legend across the galaxy. Parents told their children about the humans who never gave up. Military academies studied human tactics and strategy. The name human became synonymous with deadly determination. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of his new command ship and looked out at the stars. The border was quiet now. Alien ships stayed far away from human territory. The empty space around human worlds was a testament to the power of fear. The communication systems that had once carried threats now carried requests for permission to enter human space. Merchant vessels would wait days for approval to cross the border. No one wanted to risk making the humans angry again. The prison where Prince Vextar was held became a place of pilgrimage for aliens who wanted to understand human justice. They would look at the former prince and remember what happened to those who attacked humans. The message was clear to everyone who saw him. General Crix visited the prison once a year. He would sit with his former prince and talk about the war. Both of them had learned the true cost of challenging humans. They had paid the price for their arrogance, and their people were still suffering. The human colonies in the former Zephyrian systems prospered. The new settlers were proud to live on worlds that had been won in battle. They built monuments to the crew of the Endeavor and other humans who had died in the war. The TSS Amy Rodriguez patrolled the border with new purpose. Captain Sullivan and his crew knew they were guarding more than just empty space. They were protecting the reputation that humans had earned through blood and sacrifice. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The informal motto among alien races became "Never cross the humans." Trade routes, military plans, and diplomatic policies were all designed around this simple rule. The humans had shown that some lines should never be crossed. Years passed, and the memory of the war began to fade. New generations of aliens grew up knowing only peace with humans. But the older leaders never forgot. They would tell stories about the time when one alien prince made the mistake of crossing into human space. The final entry in Admiral Morrison's log was simple. He wrote that the border was secure and human space was safe. The galaxy had learned to respect human territory. The price of that respect had been paid in blood, but the lesson would last forever. The stars continued to shine over the vast emptiness that surrounded human worlds. That emptiness was not empty at all. It was filled with the memory of what happened when someone dared to cross the line. Everyone feared human space, and now they knew exactly why.